My name is Carla Rodriguez. I was 8 years old when I learned that a family can break long before anyone actually leaves. I still remember the exact moment my parents decided to tell us. It was a Sunday afternoon in our house in Riverside, California, the kind of afternoon that felt too quiet, like the air itself was holding its breath. My mother sat on the edge of the couch, hands folded so tightly in her lap that her knuckles had gone white. My father stood near the window, not looking at any of us, pretending to be interested in the backyard he hadn't mowed in weeks. My older brother Levi sat beside me. He was 10, old enough to understand what was coming, old enough to already be bracing himself. "Your father and I need to talk to you," my mom said. Adults always say that when they're about to rearrange your entire life. They gave us the speech, the one parents must learn in some secret class. "It's not your fault. We both love you. Things are just going to be different now." Different. That word didn't mean anything to me then. I didn't know it meant dinners eaten separately. It meant quiet hallways. It meant learning to microwave food before I could properly reach the counter. It meant a house that never felt warm again. Levi crossed his arms and nodded like he didn't care, but I saw his bottom lip tremble. I pressed my knee against his, just enough to remind him he wasn't alone. A week later, Dad moved out. He took his coffee mug, his favorite recliner, a cardboard box filled with books and framed photos. What he really took, though, was the glue that held our family together. After that, everything felt hollow. Mom worked double shifts at the medical clinic downtown. When she came home, she was exhausted in a way that went beyond being tired. Her eyes looked far away, like she was always thinking about something else. Bills, schedules, survival. Levi and I learned quickly. We learned how to make boxed mac and cheese without burning it. We learned how to sign our own permission slips. We learned not to ask Mom too many questions because her answers came sharp when she was overwhelmed. At night, after she thought we were asleep, I'd hear her at the kitchen table, papers spread out, bills stacked too neatly. Sometimes she cried, quietly, like she didn't want the house to know. For a long time, it was just the three of us, existing in the same space, not really together, but not apart enough to escape the ache. We stopped talking about Dad. Not because we didn't miss him, but because Mom got this distant look whenever his name came up, like remembering him hurt too much, and we were somehow responsible for that pain. Then, a couple of years later, James entered our lives. At first, he was just a name, someone Mom mentioned casually, a coworker, a coffee friend, someone nice. We didn't think much of it. We were kids. We didn't think we had a say. Until one evening, Mom sat us down at the same scratched wooden dining table where she'd told us about the divorce. "I want you to meet someone special," she said. My stomach dropped. Levi and I exchanged a look that said everything we were too scared to say out loud. James arrived 30 minutes later with grocery store flowers and a nervous smile. He was tall and thin, glasses slipping down his nose, trying too hard in the way adults do when they want children to like them. "So Carla," he said, crouching down to my level, "your mom tells me you're really good at art." I nodded. I didn't trust my voice. He wasn't the problem. Not yet. That came later. The real change didn't come with James. It came with Aiden. He was 4 years old the first time Mom brought him into our house, James's son from a previous relationship. I remember the day clearly because it was a Saturday morning and Levi and I were still in our pajamas, cereal bowls balanced on our knees, watching cartoons that neither of us was really paying attention to. The front door opened and suddenly there was noise where there usually wasn't. Small footsteps, high-pitched excitement, the sound of someone laughing too loudly for such a quiet house. Aiden burst into the living room like he owned it. Messy blonde hair, big blue eyes, a superhero backpack slipping off one shoulder. And my mother, my tired, distant, always busy mother, dropped to her knees. Her face transformed in a way I hadn't seen in years. "Hey there, sweetie," she said, opening her arms wide. Her voice was soft, musical, the voice she used to use when Levi and I were little. "Do you want to see your new room?" Your new room. The words hit me like a slap. I looked at Levi, waiting for him to say something. He didn't. His jaw tightened, and I could tell he was thinking the same thing I was. We didn't know Aiden was staying. We didn't know Dad's old home office, the one that still smelled faintly like his aftershave, had been converted into a child's bedroom. Superhero sheets, toy cars lined up on the floor, a brand new bed. Mom had planned all of this without telling us. I stood in the doorway while she helped Aiden arrange his stuffed animals, laughing at his jokes, brushing his hair back from his face, with a tenderness that made something cold settle deep in my chest. It was like watching a stranger wear my mother's face. Within weeks, the difference became impossible to ignore. Mom woke up early again, but not for Levi or me. She woke up to make Aiden Mickey Mouse pancakes, cutting the fruit into little stars and hearts. She packed his lunches with handwritten notes and smiley faces. She read him bedtime stories in silly voices, kissed his forehead, and stayed until he fell asleep. Levi and I still made our own breakfasts. We still did our own laundry. When I asked Mom why she never helped me with homework anymore, she sighed and said, "You're old enough to handle it, Carla. Aiden needs me more right now." I didn't know how to explain that I needed her too. One night stands out more than the rest. I was sitting at the kitchen counter, math homework spread out in front of me. Fractions. They might as well have been written in another language. I stared at the page for hours, erasing and rewriting the same wrong answers. In the living room, Aiden was crying. His favorite cartoon had ended, and the world, apparently, had collapsed. Mom was right there with him. She rocked him in her arms, humming softly, whispering reassurances, brushing tears off his cheeks like they were precious. I sat there for 2 hours. She never once looked my way. When I finally gave up and went to bed, my homework unfinished, I heard her through the wall, reading Aiden a story. Her voice was patient, loving, unrushed. That was the night I understood something that scared me. Mom wasn't just dating James. She was rebuilding herself. And Levi and I weren't part of the blueprint. James started staying over more. Then most nights. Then all nights. His clothes appeared in Mom's laundry basket. His shoes lined up by the door. His preferences suddenly mattered in every conversation. "What do you want for dinner?" Mom would ask. Before we could answer, she'd add, "But James doesn't like spicy food, so maybe something else." Our house began to feel smaller, like it was closing in on us. Levi started spending more time at friends' houses. I retreated into my room, sketchbooks and headphones becoming my shield. We weren't angry, not yet. We were confused. It felt like we'd been quietly demoted in our own lives. The announcement came on a Tuesday morning. Mom stood in the kitchen, coffee in hand, smiling in a way that made my stomach twist. "James and I are engaged," she said, holding up her hand. The diamond was simple, small, but she looked at it like it was everything she'd ever wanted. "Levi, we're thinking a small ceremony this spring," she continued. "Just family and close friends." Family. I wanted to ask her which family she meant. I didn't. 3 months later, my father died. The call came at 6:47 in the morning. I remember because I was tying my shoes, half asleep, annoyed that the phone was ringing so early. Mom answered it. There was a sharp intake of breath. Silence. Then a sound I had never heard her make before. A broken, gasping sob that didn't sound human. She hung up and stood there, staring at the phone like it might ring again with better news. "Mom," she swallowed hard. "Your father was in an accident," she said. "He didn't make it." The world tilted. Levi collapsed into tears, loud, uncontrolled. I stood there, frozen, numb, like something inside me had been scooped out and left hollow. Dad was supposed to walk me down the aisle someday. Teach Levi how to drive. Get old. Instead, he was gone. I thought, naively, that this would change everything. The next day, she sat us down. "I know this is hard," she said gently, "but James and I have decided to keep the wedding date. Your father would want us to move forward." Levi exploded. "What about what we need?" he shouted. "Dad just died. This is our new life." I realized then that she'd already decided whose grief mattered, and it wasn't ours. 3 weeks. That was all the time my mother allowed between burying my father and marrying another man. 3 weeks between the smell of fresh dirt and the sound of wedding music. I remember the funeral like a blur of black fabric and muffled voices. Levi cried the entire time, clinging to my arm like if he let go, he might fall apart completely. I didn't cry at all, not then. I stood beside the casket staring at the polished wood, waiting to feel something, anger, devastation, anything. But all I felt was a heavy, hollow pressure behind my ribs. People kept telling us how sorry they were, how young we were to lose our father, how strong our mother was. Strong. That word followed her everywhere. Strong for going back to work so quickly. Strong for keeping the wedding plans. Strong for not letting tragedy stop her life. No one asked Levi or me how we were holding up. The day after the funeral, Mom sat us down at the kitchen table like she always did when she had already made up her mind. "I know this is a lot to process," she said, folding her hands together carefully. "But James and I believe it's important to keep moving forward." Levi stared at her like she had just slapped him. "You're still getting married," he said flatly. "Yes," she replied. "Life doesn't stop because something terrible happens." I felt something snap inside my chest. "Our dad just died," I said quietly. My voice sounded far away, like it didn't belong to me. "Doesn't that matter?" Her expression softened, but her tone didn't. "Of course it matters, Carla. But James and Aiden need stability too." There it was. Even now, standing in the wreckage of our family, she was choosing them. Levi stood up so fast his chair scraped against the floor. "So what, we just pretend everything's fine?" he yelled. "You expect us to smile at your wedding?" "This is not a party," Mom said sharply. "It's the beginning of our new family. I need you both to understand that." But we didn't understand. We couldn't. The wedding took place in James's parents' backyard in Pasadena. White folding chairs, string lights, a soft spring breeze that felt offensive in its cheerfulness. I wore a pale blue dress that didn't quite fit right. Levi wore a suit that made him look older than he was. Neither of us smiled unless someone pointed a camera at us. James's family hovered around Aiden like he was the center of the universe, complimenting his tiny suit, laughing at his jokes, passing him from one set of arms to another. No one noticed Levi's red-rimmed eyes. No one noticed my hands shaking. During the ceremony, Mom walked down the aisle beaming, like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't stood at my father's grave less than a month ago. When they exchanged vows, I stared at the ground, my heart pounding so loudly I thought everyone could hear it. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, applause broke out around us. I felt sick. At the reception, I watched Mom dance with James too at last. She laughed, rested her head against his chest, looked happier than I'd seen her in years. That was the moment something crystallized inside me. My father's death hadn't interrupted her happiness. It had inconvenienced it. The cake cutting was the final blow. Mom pulled Levi and me closer for photos, her arm tight around my shoulders. "This is our fresh start," she whispered, smiling for the camera. "I want you both to embrace this new chapter." Fresh start. As if the years she'd spent married to my father, the years that created Levi and me, were just a rough draft she was happy to discard. After the wedding, the house changed completely. James's furniture replaced Dad's. Leather couches, new art, different smells, different rules. And then came the announcement that would haunt me for the next 15 years. Mom sat us down in the living room one evening, Aiden coloring at the coffee table. "There are going to be some new expectations," she said calmly. "If you want to keep seeing your father's parents, Aiden needs to be included." I stared at her, certain I'd misheard. "What do you mean?" I asked. "I mean," she said patiently, "we're one family now. If Grandma and Grandpa Rodriguez want to see you, Aiden comes too. We don't exclude anyone." Levi laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was insane. "They're not his grandparents," he said. "They never met him. He never met Dad." "They are now," Mom replied firmly. "That's what blended families do." Dad's parents tried. They really did. They invited all of us to their 4th of July barbecue. Grandpa told stories about Dad's Little League games. Grandma brought out old photo albums. Aiden didn't understand why everyone was emotional over a man he'd never known. He got bored, asked for his tablet, whined. It felt like dragging a stranger into a funeral and asking them to clap. After a few months, Grandma pulled Levi and me aside. "This isn't working," she said gently. "We love you, but Aiden doesn't need to be part of every memory of your father." When we told Mom, she exploded. "They're trying to divide our family," she snapped. "If they can't accept Aiden as their grandson, then they don't get access to you either." Just like that, she cut us off. No more Sunday dinners, no more holidays, no more connection to the man who helped make us. In their place, we got James's parents. They were polite, kind enough, but they treated Levi and me like afterthoughts, charity cases. They remembered Aiden's favorite snacks, his cartoons, his school schedule. They had to ask how old I was. The worst was Dad's birthday. Every year since the divorce, Levi and I had spent February 15th with Grandpa Rodriguez, visiting Dad's grave, then eating at his favorite burger place. This year, Mom decided we'd celebrate at home instead. She cooked a big dinner, made a cake, invited James to talk about how great Dad had been. James had met him twice. Aiden kept asking why we were having cake when it wasn't anyone's birthday. It felt like a performance. A sanitized version of grief designed to make Mom feel like she was doing the right thing. That night, Levi came into my room and sat on my bed. "It's like she's trying to erase him," he whispered. I nodded. That was the night we started building walls, not to keep people out, but to protect what little we had left. By the time I turned 16, our house no longer felt like a place we lived. It felt like a place we were tolerated. Everything revolved around Aiden. His school schedule, his soccer practices, his play dates, his moods. The calendar on the refrigerator was no longer Mom's careful handwriting and Levi's scribbled reminders. It was color-coded blocks labeled Aiden's game, Aiden's rehearsal, Aiden's birthday countdown. Levi and I faded into the margins. If Levi wanted to hang out with friends, James would ask where he was going, who he'd be with, what time he'd be back. Questions that had never been asked when Dad was alive. If I wanted to sign up for an after-school art program, James would purse his lips and talk about cost and practicality. "We have to think long-term," he'd say, glancing at Mom. "College savings, especially with Aiden still so young." Mom would nod, always nod. When I tried to talk to her alone, really talk to her, she seemed distracted, her attention drifting back toward Aiden even when he wasn't in the room. "You're mature for your age," she told me once. "You understand, right?" I understood more than she wanted to admit. I understood that maturity was just another word she used to justify neglect. Levi stopped trying altogether. He got his driver's license and disappeared whenever he could. Friends' houses, late shifts at his part-time job, anywhere but home. I stayed quiet, watched, learned. Dad's pictures disappeared one by one. First from the living room, then the hallway. Eventually, they were all stacked on a single shelf near the laundry room, out of sight unless you were looking for them. Aiden's artwork took their place. Crayon drawings, glitter glue projects, certificates with his name spelled in bright colors. It was subtle, almost polite, but the message was clear. This was no longer our home. The breaking point came during my junior year of high school. College applications loomed over everything. My art teacher pulled me aside one afternoon and told me I had real talent, said I should aim high. UCLA. Programs that could open doors. That night, I brought it up at dinner. James didn't even look up from his plate. "Community college makes more sense," he said casually. "You can stay home, save money. For Aiden," he added, like it was obvious. I waited for Mom to say something, to remind him that this had been my dream long before he entered our lives, that Dad had worked in creative fields, that this mattered. She didn't. "James makes a good point," she said. "It's practical." That was the moment I knew I was on my own. I started working evenings at a local coffee shop, saved every tip, every paycheck. Levi did the same, picking up extra shifts at an auto repair shop. We didn't talk about leaving. We didn't have to. The countdown was silent, but constant. When I turned 18, I packed my car in the early morning hours. Mom was in the kitchen helping Aiden with a science project about the solar system. Papier-mâché planets spread across the table. "You're really doing this?" she asked, glancing over her shoulder. "Yes," I said. She paused, like she wanted to say something meaningful. Instead, she said, "You know, you always have a family here." I looked at her. Really looked. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty when I realized I didn't believe her. I moved in with my boyfriend Jake, who lived near the college campus. He was a year older than me, steady, patient, and most importantly, never made me feel like I was too much or not enough. 6 months later, Levi left for college in Arizona, as far as he could get while still affording tuition. For the next 5 years, I kept my distance. Texts on birthdays, polite holiday appearances, carefully neutral conversations. James asked about my job at the graphic design firm. Mom updated me on Aiden's achievements. I nodded, smiled, left early. It was manageable. Until last month, Mom called me at work. She never called me at work. "I need to talk to you about Aiden," she said without greeting. My stomach tightened instantly. "What about him?" "He's been asking why you and Levi never visit," she continued. "He feels like you don't care about him." I took a deep breath. "Mom, I have my own life now." "You haven't been to Sunday dinner in 3 months, she snapped. "You missed his 10th birthday." "He's not my brother," I said. The silence on the line was long and heavy. "I can't believe you're still saying that," she finally replied. "After everything James and I have done." "What family?" I asked, the words slipping out before I could stop them. "You only call when it's about him." Her voice rose. "You're being selfish." I laughed. A short, bitter sound. "I was 8 when you replaced Dad. 11 when you married James weeks after he died. 12 when you cut us off from his family. And I'm selfish?" "Your father's been gone 15 years, she said coldly. "You need to move on." That was it. I felt something settle inside me, heavy but final. "You moved on before he was even gone," I said. "And you stopped being my mother a long time ago." Her response came sharp and shaking. "If that's how you feel, then maybe you don't deserve to be part of this family." For the first time in my life, I didn't argue. "You're right," I said quietly. "I don't." I hung up. And for the first time in 15 years, I could breathe. After that phone call, something fundamental shifted inside me. Not dramatically, not all at once. It was quieter than that. Like the moment you realize you've been holding your breath for so long that breathing again feels unfamiliar. I sat at my desk for 20 minutes after hanging up with Mom, staring at the same unfinished email on my screen. My hands were shaking. My chest felt tight. A few coworkers asked if I was okay, and I nodded automatically because I didn't know how to explain what had just happened. How do you explain that your own mother finally said the thing she'd been implying for most of your life? That you were optional, that you were expendable, that if you didn't fit neatly into the family she rebuilt, then you didn't deserve a place in it at all. That evening, I called Levi. He was in Phoenix, still living in the small apartment he'd moved into after graduation. I could hear traffic in the background, the hum of a city that had become his refuge. I told him everything. He didn't interrupt, didn't try to fix it. He just listened. When I finished, there was a long pause. "Are you okay?" he finally asked. I thought about it. "I think I'm lighter," I said. "Does that make sense?" He let out a breath that sounded like relief. "Yeah, it does." "I feel guilty for not feeling guilty," I admitted. "That's because the guilt was never yours," he said quietly. We sat in silence for a moment, connected by everything we'd survived. Then he said something that surprised me. "I'm proud of you for finally saying what we'd both been thinking since we were kids, for not apologizing, for not shrinking." "What if I burned the bridge?" I asked. Levi snorted softly. "What bridge? There hasn't been one in years. We've just been pretending there was." 2 weeks later, I got a call I never expected. It was from my Aunt Linda, my dad's sister. I hadn't spoken to her since Mom cut us off from Dad's side of the family. I didn't even know how she had my number. "I hope it's okay that I called," she said gently. "I heard what happened." My first thought was confusion. "How would you know?" I asked. She sighed. your grandmother told me. That didn't make sense. Mom had made it very clear that Dad's family was out of our lives. Linda seemed to read my thoughts. We never stopped keeping track of you and Levi, she said softly. We just stayed quiet, out of respect. We didn't want to make things harder for you. Something inside my chest cracked open. She suggested we meet for coffee. We sat in a small cafe in downtown Los Angeles, sunlight pouring through the windows. Linda looked older than I remembered, but her smile was the same, warm, familiar, real. They never stopped loving you, she said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. Your grandparents have been following your lives from a distance for years. Birthdays, graduations, jobs. They were just waiting for you to be ready. The tears came fast and without warning. All those years, I'd believed we'd been erased. But we hadn't. We'd been remembered. Linda showed me photos on her phone. Dad at my age, holding one of my childhood drawings. Dad with his first camera. Dad smiling in that crooked, lopsided way I'd inherited. He carried this in his wallet until the day he died, she said, showing me a picture of my elementary school art project, creased and faded. I cried harder than I had at the funeral. For 15 years, I'd felt like I was fighting alone to keep my father alive in memory. I hadn't been. Last month, Levi flew in from Phoenix. We spent Thanksgiving with Grandma and Grandpa Rodriguez for the first time since we were kids. It felt surreal, like stepping back into a version of ourselves we'd thought was gone forever. Grandpa told the same old stories about Dad's high school football games. Grandma made Dad's favorite pumpkin pie. We went through photo albums and laughed and cried in equal measure. No one rushed us. No one tried to control how we remembered him. Mom didn't call that day. I didn't expect her to. According to Linda, Mom has been telling people that Levi and I abandoned the family, that she's heartbroken, but focusing on the child who wants to be there. It's exactly what I expected. In her version of the story, she's the victim. But for the first time, I don't feel the need to correct her. I don't need her to understand anymore. I don't need her approval. I spent years trying to earn back something I never actually lost. But it became quieter in the way that matters. The constant tension, the low-grade anxiety I'd carried for most of my life began to fade. Not disappear, but loosen its grip. I stopped checking my phone with dread whenever an unknown number called. I stopped rehearsing conversations with my mother in my head, imagining what I should say if she reached out again. She didn't. And for the first time, that didn't hurt. Jake noticed the change before I did. "You're lighter," he said one night as we sat on the couch, our feet tangled together. Not happy exactly, but steadier. I thought about it for a moment. "I think I finally stopped trying to earn something," I said. "Love, approval, a place." He nodded like that made perfect sense. Jake had been there through the worst of it. The strained family dinners, the carefully worded excuses, the way my shoulders always tensed whenever Mom's name came up. He never pushed me to reconcile, never told me I'd regret standing my ground. He just stayed. Levi and I started talking more too. Real conversations, not just updates and surface-level jokes. We talked about childhood memories we'd never processed, about the things we'd normalized that, in hindsight, were anything but normal. "Do you remember how she used to call us easy kids?" Levi said once. I laughed softly. Yeah, like that was a compliment. We both knew what it really meant. Low maintenance, low priority. Levi was doing well in Phoenix. He'd landed a solid job as an engineer and was dating a teacher who made him laugh. Actually laugh. Not the polite kind he'd mastered growing up. "I didn't realize how tense I was until I left," he admitted. "I thought that was just life." It wasn't. A few weeks later, Linda invited us to a small family gathering. Nothing big, just dinner, no pressure. Grandma hugged me for a long time when I walked through the door. Grandpa clapped Levi on the back and made some joke about how tall he'd gotten, even though Levi had stopped growing years ago. They treated us like we'd never been gone. At one point, Grandma pulled me aside and handed me a small box. "I think this belongs to you," she said. Inside was Dad's old camera, the one he used to take pictures of us when we were little, the one Mom had packed away after the divorce, then forgotten. "I couldn't bring myself to give it away," Grandma said softly. He talked about you every time he used it. I held it like it might disappear if I wasn't careful. That night, lying in bed, I thought about all the years I'd spent believing I was unwanted. I wasn't. I was just loved, quietly, patiently, without conditions. Mom never reached out. According to Linda, she still tells people that Levi and I chose to abandon the family, that she did everything she could, that some people just don't appreciate sacrifice. I don't correct her. Her story doesn't define me anymore. Jake and I have started talking about getting married next year. Nothing flashy, just something that feels right. I know Dad's family will be there. I know Levi will stand beside me. And I know, without a doubt, that my father's memory will be honored honestly, not rewritten, not erased. Sometimes I still wonder what might have happened if Mom had handled things differently, if she'd given us time to grieve, if she'd tried to blend families instead of replacing one, if she'd let Levi and me keep our connection to Dad without conditions. But I don't live in what-ifs anymore. She made her choices. Now I'm making mine. I'm choosing the people who show up without asking me to shrink. I'm choosing the family that never asked me to forget who I came from. I'm choosing peace over obligation. For the first time since I was 8 years old, I don't feel like I'm standing on the outside of something, trying to be let in. I'm exactly where I belong.